Okay, we are in part 2 of the Chaucer PowerPoint. We are in the second part of the prologue of the Canterbury Tales. So this is called The Gathering of the Pilgrims. And Chaucer is going to tell us of how he met the 29 other pilgrims at the Tabard Inn, which is in the London borough of Southwark. And when he tells us, he's going to describe them, who they were, their rank, and then information that he has gathered about them, especially their clothing. Part 3 of the prologue is the description of the pilgrims. This is the longest section of the prologue. He goes through every single pilgrim that he meets. He gives them, well, I can't say every single pilgrim. He does jump over and skip over a couple of them, and we'll talk about why he does that later on when we start reading. No one is sure if he would have described every single one of them if the work was completed, but what we do know is that the people that he does describe, he does a very articulate job of doing so, and he doesn't hold anything back. He doesn't hold any opinions back, so it's really kind of funny sometimes how he describes them. Part 4 is kind of Chaucer's apology. He dodges the blame for any of the other pilgrims' villainous or lewd behavior. He says, "It's not my fault. All I am is I'm the messenger. I'm retelling the stories that they told me. So if their tales that they tell later on are vulgar or go against the church or go against another person, it's not my job. It's not my fault. My job is just to be the reporter, and I don't really have the authority to change their words." Part 5 is the introduction of the host. Okay, so we go to the Tabard Inn. All the pilgrims meet up. 29 pilgrims meet up. Chaucer then will describe the innkeeper, who is referred to as the host. He enjoys the pilgrims. He enjoys the pilgrims so much that he actually decides to close up shop, close up the Tabard Inn, and go with them on the pilgrimage. He is the one that actually proposes the tale-telling contest. And the contest is each person will tell 2 tales on the way to Canterbury, and then each person will tell 2 tales on the way back. The winner, as voted on by the other pilgrims, whoever has the best tale, will win a free dinner at the Tabard Inn upon their return. Part 6 is the next day. So they go to sleep after they determine that they're going to do this contest. The next day, after sleeping through the night, they are awakened by the host and they begin their journey. They all draw straws to see who will go first, who will tell the first tale, and the knight wins and agrees to go first. So the pilgrims in the prologue, obviously I'm not going to go through all of them, but I want you to have a little bit of information about each one of the main pilgrims. The ones that are mentioned and described are these: the knight, the squire, the yeoman, the prioress, the monk, the friar, the merchant, the clerk, the sergeant of law, or the lawyer, the franklin, the cook, the shipman, the doctor, the wife of Bath, her job is just to be a wife, the parson, the plowman, the miller, the manciple, the reeve, the summoner, and the pardoner. The people that are only mentioned, like briefly skipped over, is the nun, the nun's priest, and the 5 guildsmen. Each person falls into a social group, and there are 3 broad social groups. One, we have the military. Nobility falls into this category, but there are no members of nobility that are traveling in this group. The only ones that we have that are a part of this group are the knight and the squire, and they are more military than they are nobility. The second part of the group is the clergy, and those are the religious officials, and those people are the prioress, the monk, the friar, and the parson. And then you have the laity, or everybody else. Okay, landowners and laborers and professionals and stewards and church officers. Not clergymen or clergy persons, but church officers like the summoner and the pardoner. Chaucer's intention is to describe each pilgrim as they seem to him. So imagine you were told to describe your best friend. Now imagine you were told to describe your worst enemy. Your opinion is going to change depending upon their experiences. And it's important that the descriptions are subject to his memory, but they're also shaped by his perceptions and opinions of each person. He positions himself as a mediator between the 2 groups, the group of pilgrims, and us, the audience. The narrator addresses as you, the audience as you, and he'll deliberately say you when he's speaking about the audience. The Canterbury Tales tells the story of these 14th century pilgrims who decide to entertain themselves on their long walk to Canterbury by telling these tales. He writes a story for each pilgrim and even writes himself into the story, but he has a sense of humor, which is always good, and he shows himself as being boring and nerdy and kind of wimpy, whose story is so dull and badly told that the other pilgrims force him to stop talking. In the 14th century, people usually read out loud rather to themselves, and there are medieval pictures of Chaucer actually performing to his audience, a bit like rappers do today. So the first story is told by the knights. In that it is entitled The Knight's Tale. The actual video or the movie The Knight's Tale that I referenced before that starred Heath Ledger is loosely interpreted, or a loose interpretation of the story itself. It mostly takes place in ancient Athens. It combines Christian and pagan elements. It mixes Greek mythology with the Christian ideologies of love, peace, and forgiveness. It's a conflicted story of two royal Theban cousins who love the same woman. The Greek gods ultimately determine the outcome, portraying the concept that mankind's fate is preordained. And it's the longest and most complex of the tales. Okay? It is served as an inspiration for Shakespeare's The Two Noble Kinsmen over 2 centuries later. We will actually read The Knight's Tale together. Then we have The Miller's Tale. This is set in Oxford, England. The monk was actually chosen to go next, but the drunken miller kind of cuts his way in to the storyteller by saying he has a tale to rival the Knight's Tale. And it's this kind of absurd and comedic tale involving adultery and practical jokes. And the tale is raunchy and offensive to many of the pilgrims, as was the miller himself. And the leading female is neither pure nor faithful. She's very different than the lead in The Knight's Tale. And also it's a narrative of a love triangle, but perhaps the exact opposite of The Knight's Tale. The characters are cleverly constructed, and Chaucer's description of each of the 4 main characters are very detailed. Then we have The Wife of Bath's Tale. This is a satirical tale that follows the lowly lady. This theme was very popular during medieval times. The woman is ugly during the day, but beautiful at night. Cue the laughter. Okay, based on an old folk tale entitled Sir Gawain and Dame Ragnell. The tale is a moral anecdote used by medieval preachers to enforce a moral lesson. The dame, the wife of Bath, Dame Alice, has 5 husbands and numerous affairs. So, ironically, she believes that she is experienced and the expert on relationships. Chaucer provides insight into the role of women through the wife of Bath and through her tale. In medieval society, women were little more than their husband's property, and they had few legal rights of their own. In her prologue, though, Dame Alice is depicted as a very strong woman who voices her contempt for the degradation of women. She is perhaps our first feminist. The tale deals not so much with women's gaining absolute power as with gaining individuality and equality. And the wife of Bath really is an early advocate for women's rights. Then we have The Pardoner's Tale, and this is a folk tale about the evils of greed that turns into a sermon about sin. Ironically, the pardoner preaches against transgressions, but he extorts money from people. This is one of the most hypocritical characters in the Canterbury Tales. He swindles churchgoers by passing off pardons or fake pardons as religious relics. He'll pass off a pillowcase as the Virgin Mary's veil or St. Peter's Sail, and he'll sell pig bones as relics, saying they're the bones of saints. It really is a comment on the corruption of the church as it appears at this time. In medieval times, the Catholic Church was the only religion in Europe prior to Reformation, and it played an important role for all the citizens. Daily life could be extremely difficult, and the thought of a pleasant afterlife made it a little bit more bearable. This link is actually The Pardoner's Tale with some more information. We need to talk about the important themes that kind of run rampant through not only the Knight's Tale, but some of the other tales. The first is courtly love, not Courtney love, courtly love. We will talk a little bit more about that, courtly love, next class. But courtly love, is the gist of it, is it's a set of attitudes toward love that were strong during the Middle Ages. According to the idea, a knight or a nobleman worshipped a woman of high birth, and his love for her inspired him to do great and magnificent things on the battlefield and elsewhere. There was usually no physical relationship or marriage between them. However, the woman was usually married to another man. The second theme is importance of company, and I know you're laughing at my picture with Jay and Silent Bob, but quite literally, a company is a group of people with whom one eats or breaks bread. The word for good friend or companion also comes from these words, but in a more abstract sense, company has an economic connotation. It was the term designated to connote a group of people engaged in a particular business as it is today. But the importance of being around people that you socialize with and that you appreciate, sometimes you like them, sometimes you don't, that's okay. But the importance of being around them. Corruption in the church is another important theme. By the late 14th century, the Catholic Church was governed by England, Ireland, and the entire continent of Europe, had become extremely wealthy. And so there was this distaste for the excess of the church, and it triggered stories and anecdotes about greedy, irreligious churchmen who accepted bribes, bribed others, and indulged themselves in sensually and gastronomically inappropriate activities, and they ignored the poor and the famished peasants who were begging at their doors. So a lot of Chaucer's tales talk about this as well. So that is the end of our presentation. Hopefully you have gotten all the notes that you need. Obviously go back, make sure your outline is completely filled in, and you have everything that you need to know about not only Chaucer, the Canterbury Tale, the general prologue in the 6 parts, the information about some of the characters, as well as the important themes.